Hey everybody. So I had so much fun talking about 2024 animated films with my friend Matt. I always love any chance I get to talk with him. But there were a couple weird things. He was sick, and then there was some buffering on his side, and then also something weird happening with my mic. I've not had that in any other videos. I do have a new mic, so it's possible there's just something weird happening. Um, but I still think it's listenable. I still think it's pretty good stuff. And so sorry about that. But I hope you enjoy it. And thanks again. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. And today we are going to have a ton of fun. We are talking about 2024 in animation. And there's nobody that I would rather do this with than my friend Matt Brunette. And Matt, thank you so much for coming back.
Hey, you're welcome. And by the way, hopefully this will still come out as a very fun episode, even though, well, as you probably hear, I am a little bit sick, and it's unfortunately the kind that does affect my throat. So this episode will come with a little bit of repeating. Hopefully you won't mind that, but don't worry, I still got plenty of energy to talk about a lot of these animated movies.
Yes, we hopefully you'll feel better soon. But why don't we talk about first just overall? What did you think about the year in animation overall? Do you think it was a strong year or a weaker year? How do you feel?
Honestly, in my opinion, I feel like this is definitely a much weaker year. Now, there have been a few highlights, of course, and there have been some standouts that have definitely been great. But I feel like for the most part, especially those that came out on streaming, especially like on Netflix, oh boy, they put out a
Yeah,
lot of junk. I would say it was more of a disappointing kind of year where like yeah, like there are still some that okay, they're kind of like mid, they're okay, but like we only have like a handful that feel like are truly memorable that came out of 2024. But so far, yeah, this has been one of the weaker years for animated films in this decade.
yeah. I mean, I think partly it's because it's been so strong. Like, I mean, last year was, in my opinion, one of the best years like ever in the history of the medium. So I think that if this was like 2006, it would feel like, wow, this is a pretty good year, or some years that were a little bit weaker. It might not feel that way, but it's such an exciting time for the medium right now. And so some studios and players are finding it difficult to catch up with the very exciting players, and it's going to be interesting to see going forward, kind of what happens. But let's dive in. So I have 37 on my list. You have a little bit less, so I'll be talking about a few that you don't have. So let's start out talking about what I think was the worst movie, period, not just animated film of the year. I saw almost 200 feature films in this year, and Megamind: The Doom Syndicate was the worst movie that I saw in 2024. And it's not only that it was terrible, because it was terrible story, terrible animation, terrible voice casting, but that it was such a disappointment. And DreamWorks usually does really great with their sequels. Almost all their sequels are better than the original films, or at least as good. And so for them to just give this whatever this was so disappointing, because I love the original Megamind. I've always felt like it was pretty underappreciated, underrated, and so this was just so disappointing to me. How did you feel about
Oh,
it?
I absolutely agree. I'll even take it a step further and I'll say not only is this the worst animated film of the year and even possibly the worst movie of the year, I'd even go as far and say that this is one of the worst animated sequels in history.
Yeah.
You could tell that the existence of this movie is purely made just because Universal has heard that, oh, well, there's some popularity. There's like a cult following with Megamind. So let's go actually make more Megamind content. And that's how we ended up with the Doom Syndicate and the series Megamind Rules, because technically Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate is a pilot movie to that series. Now, I don't know if there's been people who did watch Megamind Rules, but I know there's been some who did watch Doom Syndicate. And it was absolutely awful. I don't think I don't think there's been an animated film in a long time that made me this upset, especially with the way that it was just so like tacked on together. It was just like it's something that you could feel like it's a very rushed production, that there was no time, there was not enough resources to actually create a sequel that feels like would be worthwhile or could even be on par with the original Megamind. I'll even say right now, the sound of my voice right now is much smoother and a lot more pleasant than the Doomsday Kid over
Yeah.
there. It's just overall this god awful movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if this would ultimately end up becoming the worst animated feature of the decade. It's going to be hard to go and top the awfulness that my the Doom Syndicate has
Yeah.
placed.
I mean, I think it's without a doubt the worst movie DreamWorks has ever made. And that's saying something because they've had some really bad movies over the years. But I'd rather
Oh
watch this
yeah.
than Shark Tale. I'd rather watch Shark Tale than this, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, not it's not just that, but it's like it's the kind that like technically DreamWorks didn't necessarily make themselves. It's like it's just something that ultimately Universal and like with
Yeah.
the assistance of DreamWorks kind
And
of
it,
just like outsourced it to just go and pack it on and just throw it out there.
and just with like a little bit more effort, they I think they really could have had something. I mean, I think there was so much potential to do something interesting with Megamind. Like it was
Oh
there,
yeah.
and now it's over. Like they've ruined any potential. Like it's done. We're never gonna have any more Megamind because they screwed it so badly.
I mean, like, I wouldn't go and say that, really. I mean, there can always be a second chance somewhere in the
I don't
future.
know.
But I feel like so far, in the present with what we see right now, with what they've delivered, it really shows that DreamWorks and Universal, they don't really care about Megamind. And that's kind of the
No.
unfortunate lesson that we've gotten from this.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, like I said, I really am a big fan of the original. We did a whole episode breakdown, deep dive of it. I have the art book. I really love it. So, oh, so disappointing.
No,
But
I really enjoy the movie as well. I really like the first Megamind.
yeah,
I'll even say that even though, well, we'll talk about this a little later, like even if I'm a Despicable Me fan, I actually do acknowledge that even Megamind is actually better than
yeah,
the Despicable Me movies, or at least compared to the first
yeah,
one even.
I agree. Well, at number 36 is where I have Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. I just watched this week. Finally, I'd heard it was terrible, and it really is just. I've enjoyed for the most part this SpongeBob movies. I've watched the show off and on, a few episodes. I'm not an expert by any means, but I've seen a little bit of it, and I find it quite funny and quite sarcastic and enjoyable. And there's like a nutty absurdism, I think, to what I've seen of SpongeBob. It's like a little bit crazy, which I enjoy. This was just terrible. I hated it. I hated the story. I hated Yeah, I thought it was really bad.
Just out of curiosity, what was your reaction when you saw Wanda Sykes' backstory? Like just the visuals of
What?
what they try to represent. Like,
It,
oh my God.
I mean,
Like, I
it
want to know.
was crazy, but not in a like fun absurdist way that the show usually is. Which just like they're out of ideas, I think. They're just done. And
Oh, it's
there's two SpongeBob movies coming out next year. It's like, what?
oh yeah. No, like trust me. Like I kind of regret not recording myself when I saw that backstory with Wanda Sykes and what they did with her head up of a little girl. It was just it's one of the most baffling things I've ever seen in an animated feature. It's like it's crazy, it's absurd, but not in the good way
Yeah.
we all know and love from SpongeBob. Now, one thing that I will say is that I don't know if I could say that this is the worst thing that SpongeBob ever put out, period, because I have heard that there are certain episodes that they could be absolutely awful. But this is without a doubt the worst SpongeBob movie so far, or maybe even the worst SpongeBob movie ever. And
Like
it's actually one of those
and you
films
like
that What?
I didn't watch any of the Camp Coral stuff, but so I can't speak to that part, but like definitely of the feature films, like this is the worst one
Mhm.
by far.
Yeah, and honestly, what I despise about Saving Bikini Bottom, that it's one of those animated films that I absolutely hate, in which it values style over substance, where it's self-aware that it doesn't have a good script. It's self-aware that it knows that the materials that they're working with is awful. So to try to compensate for that, they try to be as over the top and as cartoony as they can with the visuals and with the comedy, and even that absolutely falls flat, which overall makes it a highly unpleasant experience. And yeah, like honestly, wouldn't be surprised if with the next SpongeBob movies that we are getting with the Plankton movie and the Search for SquarePants, like they'll be like they're most likely better, because it's hard to imagine if you could be anything worse than what we've just seen with Saving Bikini Bottom.
But do you think it's going to affect the Plankton movie and thinking of people after this being so bad? Do you think that or is the fan base strong enough to withstand a clunker?
Funny is that some fans have actually seen the movie. There was at one
Oh,
point a few months ago in which there was a big leak of animated content that came from Netflix, that a bunch of animated films and TV shows
oh, it was
were leaked.
multiple.
Oh
I
yeah, there
didn't.
was like a whole bunch. And one of them was
Oh,
the Plankton movie. And I don't know if people are saying that it's great or good, but they are saying that it is an improvement to the Sandy Cheeks movie. So
okay.
we'll wait and see ourselves if that really is the case. But from what I can imagine, like even if it's just okay, it'll still be a step up compared to what we've seen with the Sandy
Mm.
Cheeks movie.
Well, number 35, I have The Tiger's Apprentice. And this one, I thought the action was pretty good. This is why I was kind of debating today, kind of where I wanted it to be. Like, I thought it was pretty decent action, but the story and the characters were not up to snuff.
Mhm. Yeah,
What do you think?
the funny thing is that this is often regarded as this is Paramount's half-assed attempt trying to make their own Spider-Verse movie. And the
Mm-hmm.
craziest thing about that statement is that this is according to the animators who have worked on it. This is one of those features that had a very troublesome production, and honestly, it very much shows. And from my experience with The Tiger's Apprentice, feel like with what they have done with this movie, they tried so hard to create a new franchise, because of the Tiger's Apprentice that there is a lot of potential to be had in here. There is some cool action, and I could see like with the premise, it actually sounds pretty good, especially when they take it from the source material, which is I believe is based on a series of books. But you could absolutely tell that with their intention, they're holding so much of it back, because what they want to do with it is to try to create a whole franchise out of it. They want to go and save a lot of their stuff so that later they could go and create more movies and maybe even a TV spin-off and all that kind of stuff. But all that effort was pretty much worthless when the movie itself, like I feel like they hold way too much back, in which we really see much of the potential in the Tiger's Apprentice. They rather want to go and hide the surprise, in which considering that it didn't come out as much of a success, or that barely anyone has heard of it, considering it is a Paramount Plus animated movie. That there's no hope for it. We're not going to see any continuations of this. So, like at best, this is just lost potential.
Yeah. This is way more watchable than the previous two. It's not like an all-timer bad, but it just was pretty generic. Well, number
Mm.
34 for me is where I have Mufasa, the Lion King. They try to claim it's not animated. We, of course, know it is. But I mean, I hated the 2019 remake. And
Mm.
this, I just sat there kind of baffled. Like, what were they doing? Like, I just couldn't believe how I don't know. I just sat there kind of baffled of like, who is this for? because obviously the backstory between Scar and Mufasa is so undercooked and lame that you're supposed to believe that Scar became this psychopath who kills his brother and manipulates his nephew, all because of a love spat between him and Mufasa and Sarabi. Like, what? And like, what kid is going to be interested in this movie? I felt like it was so boring for little ones. Like, what are they going to be interested in this love triangle? And they had to put in the Timon and Pumbaa stuff because there was nothing that was fun at all in the main story for little kids. But that stuff fell so flat. It was so clunky. And I know I left kind of just baffled. Like, what on earth were they trying to do with this? And it has the classic prequel problem of explaining stuff that nobody needed explaining. We didn't need to know the origin of Pride Rock. We didn't know, like,
Oh, yeah. I will admit that the Pride Rock thing was honestly ridiculous. Like, it's in the middle of the climax, and then Rafik is just in the middle. And it's like, oh, look, an earthquake. Then we just see the mountain. It's just like, whoop, Pride Rock.
I didn't think it looked that good because they got a little more emotion out of the faces, which okay, fine. But like almost every shot was coming at you from like a fisheye perspective. It was like it was coming from, and I told people, I was like, go see this in 3D because I think it would actually be better in 3D because everything's, coming at you. So the fisheye kind of perspective would look better in 3D. But like, I just thought it was almost, the shots felt very samey throughout the whole thing. And I don't know, it just wasn't interesting visually to me on a level that maybe like that Jungle Book remake was like a little bit more visually interesting with some of the things they did. Like spending all this time, like I never thought that the Lion King would spend all this time in the snow. Like what? And I just was baffled by the whole thing. Do we really need the origin story of Rafiki's staff? Like what?
I will confess that I did like this a little bit more than you did. Like with the fact that they are trying an original story with this, it does put it a step above the 2019 remake. And I'll even say compared to the other Disney live action remakes, it is above average. But with that said though, that's really not saying much. For me, it's like it's almost good, but not quite. And even some of the story elements that they introduce, like they can be a little bit weird. And I'll even agree with you with the animation. Like I felt like that might have been a bit of a downgrade because they try to put in a little bit more emotions. Like, okay, like it's nice that you're listening to the criticisms of the 2019 remake. Then again, it does make the animals look extra weird because they're still trying to be realistic animals, but now they're trying to make human expressions, and it's like, what are you even doing? And not to mention the new villain in this. Like honestly, I feel like it's absolutely a choice that you're trying to make white lions the villains. It's like, yeah, nobody's gonna get any Kimba flashbacks from that. And not to mention that goofy ass musical number from the villain. Like who the fridge tries to be threatening and evil by telling telling their victims like, I will make you go bye-bye. And
yeah, the songs were very, very lame and unmemorable, and they stopped the momentum of the story. And I thought that this not only was that really strange that they went the Kimber route, but I thought that they looked really odd, the white lions. They looked like they didn't fit in with the palette of the rest of the design of the rest of the film to me. So yeah, it was baffling.
Yeah,
that one was so strange.
Yeah, that, and also I have to agree with you with Timon and Pumbaa. Oh my god, it is at their worst. It's almost like Barry Jenkins has such a hatred for Timon and Pumbaa that he wants to go and ruin it for everyone. So they try to make them as cringy and as annoying as possible.
Yeah, no, they really, but don't you think that's why? Is like there was no comic relief within the main story. There was nothing for kids.
I mean, technically there was Zazu, but Zazu's comedy wasn't really that
Not
great
much,
either.
yeah. So that's why I think I wouldn't be surprised if that was sort of almost a last minute addition is adding because they're like, there's just nothing here for little kids.
Well, not to mention that I feel the main purpose for those like cutaways to the future, like the events after the first movie, like it's for Blue Ivy Carter for her to like be more prominent, especially with the fact that,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
she's Beyonce's daughter. We
Right.
got to give her a bit of a career boost to, to start off like making people be more aware of who Blue Ivy Carter is.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, number 33 is where I have Despicable Me 4. And I will tell you that I actually liked the second Minions movie. And I think that that scene where the Minions are flying the plane in the second Minions movie is like top tier Minions. I think that is a very funny scene. And in my opinion, the Minions are best when they are mining the spirit of silent comedy, silent movie things when they have that energy about them. I think they can be quite funny. But this was it was like four different movies crashed into one. And I didn't think any of them were funny. The only recurring bit that got me laughing was the one minion in the vending machine.
Oh
That
yeah.
was like a funny bit. And that's what I'm saying. Like I think the minions are funniest when they are exploring like classic silent movie comedy tropes. I think that's when they're funniest. But this, just the whole story with like Gru getting blackmailed by that girl, and then there's the whole sides. Then there's also the villain, which was just bizarre, is this cockroach person, and I don't know. It just was.
Yeah,
I thought it was pretty bad.
yeah, I'll confess that this is another one that I actually liked it a lot more than you did. But then again, I don't blame you for not really enjoying it that much because as an Illumination movie, let alone a Despicable Me movie, they are very consistent and they don't focus on trying to make art or trying to make like, legitimate cinema. They know what their audience wants and they're just focusing on delivering that. And really, for the most part, like for kind of family friendly comedy movie that it is, I enjoyed it. And I'll admit that I've laughed a bunch of times. Like, even I was actually surprised that I was actually enjoying the bits with the dynamic between Gru and Gru Jr. Like, those were actually presented along with the goofiness of the minions in this case, now with the mega minions being superheroes and stuff like that, and even like having a little moment of spoofing superhero movies with what they would go and do. Like that, there are moments that I will say that they are pretty cute. So honestly, for me, I will say that like yeah, maybe it's definitely the best animated movie of the year, and it's certainly not for everyone, it knows what it wants to be, it knows what it wants to do. And I mean, for the people who do enjoy the Despicable Me film so far, it's for them. And I mean, if they enjoy it, then its mission has been accomplished.
I guess so. But I was disappointed because, like I said, I liked that Minions too. I thought it was actually pretty funny. So to me, it was a step down from that one.
Uh,
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I'm actually kind of the opposite of you. I thought it was more of a step up. I wasn't that big of a fan of the Rise of Gru, but with Despicable Me 4, it's like, yeah, it's all right. You know what you're doing. So, I'll pat you on the head for that.
Okay. All right.
Are you a fan of Rachel's reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies.
Number 32 is where I have Thelma the Unicorn. This I also watched this week. And, for about the first 30 minutes, if this had been like a 30-minute short, I would have been fine. Like, I felt like, oh, this is actually, I'm enjoying it. Like, the music is pretty good and it's a cute character. And then I looked down, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's another hour of this movie. Like, I felt like it was kind of leading to some sort of a conclusion, and then we're like going, and then it just kept going and going and going yeah. So it ended up losing me for sure. But
Yeah, for me, I just feel like this is not just one of the most generic animated films this year. Like, there's just so much of it that kind of feels bland, and it feels like it's been recycled from so many other animated features from before, especially with the fact that this is based on a children's book and they try to really stretch that out, which does explain like the length of it feeling so long. But I feel like there's kind of like this extra dash of mean-spiritedness. Like, sure, there is this interesting comedy about being a celebrity and like the Hollywood system in a way. Like, if it were handled better, this would have been like a very strong movie that had something important to go and discuss. But as right now, it just really falls flat, and it just makes everybody in the film feel absolutely despicable, including Thelma herself. And like, even as much as they want to try with like the musical numbers and stuff like that, the soundtrack I find to be just, again, so bland, just so forgettable. Like, it's another one of those that I feel like is just pretty manufactured. And
yeah,
honestly, it's quite a disappointment as well, because um this is actually from the duo who made that animated last year that was Oscar nominated that we really liked.
yeah,
It's from the couple that did Napoleon Dynamite. So seeing them make that animated short and then going to Thelma the Unicorn, I just feel like it was a massive and very disappointing downgrade.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I agree. Well, number 31, this might be a hot take. I don't know. I have The Imaginary. This does have some very pretty animation, but I thought it was so derivative of so many other films that I've seen before, and it just didn't do it for me. What did you think of this? Did you see it?
Honestly, I have not. I did
Oh,
hear a
okay.
little bit about it, but just out of curiosity, this is the one that's from Studio Ponnock, right? Like
Yes.
the same people who did Mary and the Flower.
Yes. Yeah, it just felt,
Okay.
like I said in my review, this feels like low rent Miyazaki without the vision to back it up. Uh, but yeah, some nice animation in spots, but even that feels derivative and uninspired. So, but I know
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who liked it a lot more than me, but yeah, that was what I thought.
Honestly, honestly, I wouldn't blame you, because like, even as someone who hasn't seen it, honestly, I've heard like pretty much nothing from it. Even like when it
Yeah.
came out, maybe there were like a few people who talked about it, but then its relevancy just quickly went out the window. So I think that
Yeah.
would say much. It would say something that it's not as strong as what it wants to be, which is a
Yeah.
Studio Ghibli film.
So then I have a couple more that you haven't seen. So I have Barbie Stacy to the Rescue. And I'm a big fan of the Barbie animated films. I've watched them all, reviewed them all on my channel. And there's some really creative stuff that they've done over the years, especially when you consider that they are direct to DVD, for all those years. They did not need to try as hard as they did on a bunch of them. So I do have a fondness for the series. And this is like perfectly watchable if you just want babysitter for your kids. It's fine. But like I actually, people might say that's bizarre, but I hold the Barbie movies up to a pretty high standard because so many of them were really good. And the ones that they've made for Netflix have just not been as good as the previous iterations. And this one, it's fine. It's about Stacy, and She wants to enter this balloon contest race with hot air balloon race with Barbie, but she's not old enough to be the co-pilot, so she doesn't get to do it. But Barbie is like terrible at running at riding this piloting this balloon. She's terrible. So she gets it caught in a tree and Stacy has to come to the rescue. That's the story.
Wow.
And it's just not that great. But you know, if you're a diehard Barbie fan or if you're just looking for something to entertain little girls, it's fine, but not to the standard that I expect from this franchise.
You know, I gotta say, I have to say that, you know, I of course I haven't seen it. In fact, this list right over here is the first time that I've heard about this. But just from the way you described it, it feels like the kind of Barbie movie that people expect from a Barbie
Right.
movie,
Yeah.
especially with the fact that like the main star of this, Barbie herself, is pretty much being this dumb blonde who decided to hop onto this hot air balloon and is like, I don't know how to do this. Help me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? How could you get caught in this tree? It's baffling. So yeah, and she has Chelsea with her who doesn't want to be in the race with her. Stacy wants to be, but you know the rules are the rules. And so anyway, it's one of the weaker ones. And I think that the Netflix Barbie movies, I do think they are probably more enjoyable if you watch the Dreamhouse show, which I haven't seen, and I need to watch them because a lot of them kind of pull off of that. And I know there's a lot of people who love that Dreamhouse show, but I just don't think they have been as good as the Mattel ones before, which were actually pretty creative for and a lot of them they had like full orchestras. They had like a pretty stacked voice cast, like people like Angelica Houston, Martin Short. Like they had like good people doing it. Of course, Kelly Sheridan was great as Barbie for years and years and years. So I've always felt like it was a little bit of I don't know what if you say underrated, but like a little secret hidden gem. This series, and there was some really fun stuff they did. But you can find tons of my coverage of the Barbie movies on my channel, so you should check that out. But at 29, I have 10 Lives, and this I saw at Sundance, and it's a very generic, basic animated film about a cat and his 10 lives, and it is definitely hurt by the fact that it came out, you know, fairly soon after The Last Wish, and it tries to do some of the same things. It's watchable, but very generic. So, and that was at Sundance. I don't think you've seen that, right?
Nope. In fact, just like with Stacy to the Rescue, I think this might be my first time hearing about 10 Lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So far, the animated films that they've gotten that are not the adult animated films for Sundance have just not been great. The family films, the only family film that I've really liked that they've gotten there was Timmy Failure, Mistakes Were Made. That's not animated, but I love that movie. But they've been mostly misses in family film.
I guess it's just for the sake. I guess it's just for the sake of variety to go and offer to go and say like, "Hey, look, we got animation as well. We got family films as well."
Well, and especially when you're in Utah, they want to have something, you know, for the more conservative audience, you know, here. Number 28 is where I have Hit Pig. Did you get to see Hit Pig?
Oh, actually, I had the option to do so, but at the time, I was just very busy, and I felt like, yeah, you know what? Like, I don't think it might be worth reviewing. Funny enough, like I even mentioned because some people did ask me, it's like, oh, are you gonna review Hit Pig? And I said no because at the time I was extremely busy, so I decided to go and skip it. I think it was like just before I would go on vacation, anyways. But funny enough, when I said, you know, when I said like I'm skipping Hit Pig, a lot of my fans and a lot of friends of mine, they pretty much told me, oh yeah, no, it's fine. You're not missing much. This thing is a piece of crap.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty generic, and it's too bad because there are some things that I think gave it some potential if they had really leaned into the sarcasm and made it really funny. But it just didn't lean hard enough into it, and so it just feels sort of generic. It could have been this sort of like fun take on it could have been more sort of like what the original bad guys was kind of,
Yeah.
and sort of a fun take on heist detective kind of story, and this sort of buddy story. They have a great voice cast. You got Jason Sudeikis playing the lead, so that's good, but it just ended up being very forgettable, very forgettable. So I have it at 28. Number 27 is where I have Spellbound. And this one was quite a letdown for me. I was very disappointed in it because I, you're never gonna not be excited about an Alan Menken musical, and I just found the whole thing to be so bland, so generic, and I think that Skydance, if they want to be taken seriously, they just have to do better. Like this is not good enough. Like if this movie came out in like 2006, like a weaker time for animation, maybe it might have been able to get some traction. But in this day and age where we are at, this is not good enough. This is not enough. And the two movies they have made have been not good enough. And they have all that talent there. They need to do better. It's not good enough. The only thing I thought was interesting about this movie was that it tried to say something about divorce, but I don't think it did that even very well.
No. Okay. Let me just go and get some of the positives out of the way. The animation itself is actually quite solid. I think the team at Skydance Animation, very talented. They can make some visually awesome animation. So that even shows in this, even though a lot of it does feel like it's just trying to copy Disney. Like so far, like you could tell it has a very strong team. And also the soundtrack, I think it's actually okay. Like the score is very nice, and even the songs themselves, I think they're on par with the songs that Alan Menken would go and do for the live action remakes. I mean, they're not really memorable, but they're just okay.
Yeah.
But the script with the story and the cast that they have here, they are honestly the worst of the year. I think legitimately they're on par with Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. It's the kind of movie that honestly, the more that I think about it, the more that I think about the elements that they go and present, I absolutely despise it. This really feels like John Lasseter's existential crisis, where he's trying to win back what he has lost from Disney by trying to make his own Disney films, but they end up making stuff that is so much worse. Say what you will about how Disney is right now. But even what they're doing today with stuff like Strange World, Wish, and Moana 2, they are masterpieces compared to Spellbound. It's nothing more but this cynical Disney ripoff that honestly, it really, like, as you said, there's a serious problem going on with Skydance, and I think it's really because of the leadership they have there, especially with John Lasseter. If they're just focusing on trying to make Disney ripoffs, they are going absolutely nowhere. And I would even question its future, like considering that Skydance is now merging with Paramount. Like right now, do they need Skydance animation? Because now that they're going to have like Nickelodeon and all those IPs, I mean, in all seriousness, and even you mentioned it yourself. Like one of the major things that makes this so bad is the fact that they messed up an Alan Menken musical. You would have to try to screw up an Alan Menken musical more so than to actually make it good. It's honest bad. This is the one that I find to be baffling on how it came out so bad. Like it is lucky that it got that good animation and the decent soundtrack, because otherwise, like this would be down there next to Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. So yeah, honestly, this is one of the animated films that I hated this year.
It's just so frustrating because it they have all the potential, and I was not one of those people with a chip on my shoulder. If it was a good movie, I would say it's a good movie, and it just wasn't. It wasn't. So number 26 is for me, Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim. I was very disappointed by this as well. I was hopeful in my dream world, in my dream scenario, this would be like Princess Mononoke, but with Lord of the Rings in it. And I thought, oh, this would be a great way to like introduce people that think they don't like anime. This would be like a gateway, kind of thing. And that was my hope going into it. And then I went and saw it, and it was just like a bland, generic, high fantasy anime with like a few name drops to Lord of the Rings. And I just found it very, very, very lame and generic.
Are you kidding? I've always wanted a Lord of the Rings movie that doesn't feel like a Lord of the Rings movie.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but honestly, I completely agree with you. Honestly, this really feels like this basic template of a Dungeons and Dragons game more so than an actual Lord of the Rings movie. It's the
Yeah.
kind of
I
film
agree.
that really it drags on for so long, especially with its little melodrama with the princess and the villain. Like, oh, they used to be friends, but now they're like enemies, and like trying to have like that kind of like kingdom clash and like resulting in this great war. Honestly, the most that I could think of like who is this made for is like those who are obsessed with the lore of the Lord of the Rings. Because in a way, this is trying to be like what Rogue One is to Star Wars, where it takes a specific element from the Lord of the Rings and try to really expand upon that, which in this case, it's about Helm's Deep. And if you're not interested in watching the origin of Helm's Deep, then honestly, this thing really does not matter. And it's just going to be over 2 hours of just this pretty dull anime that only has like one scene or two that acknowledges that it's the Lord of the Rings. I will say though, there is one thing that I feel like is unusually worthwhile about the War of Rohirrim. And I saw this at my movie theater that they have this tie-in popcorn bucket in the shape of the hammer that King Helm uses. And no joke, like you got the hammer part that is the popcorn bucket, but it's also attached to this really long staff that's like that's like double hold. So you basically got this popcorn bucket with a really long stick attached to it. I think that's the only valid reason to have the War of the Rohirrim is to have this really weird popcorn bucket. I
I
will
wonder if
say
that
one
was
more.
unique to Canada. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Maybe there is a cinema in the U.S. that is selling it. I will say though that even with Warner Brothers, I did hear they're quite unapologetic about the main purpose of it, and
Yeah.
that is mainly because they want to maintain the film rights to the Lord of the Rings so that they could buy themselves some time while Peter Jackson would go and produce more live action films of the Lord of the Rings.
It's just a shame because I think that it had potential to do something. It could have been cool. So it was disappointing for me. So the next set I would say are like my middle section. I like these last ones are ones I really don't like, but these ones are more middle for me. 25 is where I have the Garfield movie. This was not great. The humor particularly wasn't that effective, but I did like the animation and particularly the action animation. I thought was pretty well done, and I just think it was a little bit bizarre. Why did they decide to make it like a Mission Impossible movie? Like it was so like there was like an action film. It was very, very weird, but I did think it was well animated. But yeah, pretty not the best.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like at worst, this movie is bland, but
Yeah,
at best, it is harmless. Like this,
yeah.
I understand if people didn't like this because this is a very generic movie. And not to mention that this is also partly fueled a lot of the backlash of having Chris Pratt voice in a whole bunch of animated projects, especially in this one where his performance wasn't terrible, but at the same time, it is very low effort, and you could still hear that it is Chris Pratt. Honestly, like even as someone like me who grew up reading a lot of the Garfield comics and watching stuff like Garfield and Friends and the 2D animated specials, I watched this and honestly it's very meh. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of it that doesn't feel a whole lot like Garfield. And I mean, there are times when the comedy gets into a more cartoony route and it actually is funny. Like there are a few moments that did give me a bit of a laugh, but other than that though, it definitely is a strong contender as one of the most forgettable animated films of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Number 24, I have Piece by Piece, and that might be a hot take. Maybe people have a higher, but I thought that the Lego movie concept was creative and was the best part about the film. I found the interviewing and the documentary part of it to be pretty dry. I mean, I felt like if I wasn't interested in the nuts and bolts of Pharrell making an album and the like nuts and bolts of the recording industry, I would just not be that interested in this movie. And I'm not that interested in that. That's not a like I don't follow music. I'm not a music person. It's not interesting to me. That's just not me. And so really the only thing that I found interesting in this movie was the fact that it was Legos and it was in the animation. But if this was just a documentary, a standard documentary, I would have found it very boring. But that's just me.
Ah, that is sad to hear. I'm actually one of those people that do have a higher regard to Piece by Piece. I find it very intriguing. The animation itself, I find it to be absolutely great. Apparently, this is from a studio that actually worked on a lot of spin-off projects of the Lego movie. Like they did the
Yeah.
animation of some of the Lego movie rides, a lot of the commercials and stuff like that. And I feel like in that regard, it actually brought back a lot of the spirit of the original Lego movie. I'll even take it maybe this is a bit of a hot take, but I think the animation here to be even better than some of the later Lego movies, like compared to Lego Ninjago and Lego Movie 2, because like like they were very committed in making this all Lego. But at the same time, as someone who's not as familiar with the music industry and stuff like that, it is very intriguing to learn about who Pharrell Williams is and his origins, and like taking a sneak peek like behind the scenes of like how things work in the industry and the songs that he has worked on, like many famous and familiar songs that he put his touch into that would go and would really change the image of how music is today. Now,
Was
my
very
one
disappointed
criticism,
that nobody asked him what is happy about a room without a roof. That was very disappointing to
oh
me.
yes. Honestly, I was a little disappointed that we don't see more of the Lego minions. Like there was at one point we see like a quick cameo, but that's it. I was
Yeah.
hoping like
I
maybe
don't
we would
know.
see more.
But
But I
it
will
would
say,
have, I think the interviewer could have just had a little bit more fun. Like to me, it was all very like nuts and bolts, serious. We're chronicling what it takes to put out these albums. And like I think it actually would have done him better to like, ask him about a room without a roof. Like be a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun. And to me, it was, I don't know, I just found the interviewing not great.
yeah, well, that's one thing I will give it to you that one criticism that I do have is that it doesn't really feel like a legitimate documentary, but more like a promo to Pharrell
Yeah.
Williams. That it's like it is like suspiciously biased for Pharrell, and like even showing like even some of the flaws and the negative aspects of him. It's kind of like the same kind of negative aspects that you would give out in a job interview to try to spin it in a way that actually feels more positive. That and also I gotta say there is something very strange about Piece by Piece, and like I don't see many people talk about it, but like, isn't it weird that we got so many sexy Legos in this because they would try to recreate a lot of the music videos that are
Yeah.
already out there, so we just see a bunch of like little girls in bikinis, and it's like there's something like unintentionally funny just seeing that, like seeing a bunch of Legos trying to be like seductive and sexy and stuff like that. Like there's even one where like they would start a music video and it's like this girl in a bikini with a saxophone, but it's like in Lego form, and it's like there's a part of me just watching this like, what the fridge are you doing?
Yeah. 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 They had to, I mean, definitely stretched what they've done with Legos. Yeah. Well, my number 23 is actually another animated documentary. It's Aurora's Sunrise. And this is a movie about a woman who escapes the Armenian genocide in 1915 to 1917 and becomes a silent movie actress. And it's done through like rotoscope, kind of rotoscope style animation. And yeah, it's a little boring, but it's like solid. It's decent. So I have that at 23. 22, I have Spy Family, a Spy Times Family Code, White. This was the movie about the Spy X that, that's like a series.
Mhm.
And I was like a little bit lost. I didn't quite get it, because I haven't watched the series, but it was still pretty fun. Like the action and the the humor and the characters. I could see, especially if you watch the show, like you really enjoy it. So I have
Yeah,
that at
by the way,
22.
I I have a question just to go back a bit in Aurora Sunrise. Where did you even see that?
I saw that at Animations Film.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they were very good to me. I didn't attend, but they let me attend virtually this year because
Oh,
it's
okay.
so frustrating because they didn't announce even anything about the dates or anything that was going on until like 3 weeks before. I'm like, I need more time to be able to plan. Like,
Mm.
so I don't know what's going on with that festival, but anyway, I hope I can go again because I do love it. And it's a very well done festival. If you ever get a chance, it's great. But that's
Oh,
where I
I do.
saw Aurora Sunrise, and that's where I saw the Looney Tunes, which we'll be talking about coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hope one day I do go see it, or
yeah,
I
it's
do attend.
one of the best experiences ever was getting to go in 2022, I think it was. Where anyway, it was 2022, I think, where I saw Belle with Momo Hosada.
Oh.
He was there. He introduced it. That was an amazing experience.
Ooh.
Um, so number 21 is where I have My Hero Academia. You're next. I haven't watched the series, but this series of movies does a really good job of catching up the viewer with the series and what's going on. They
Oh,
do,
okay.
yeah, they really do, and they've all been good. I've liked every single one of the My Hero Academia movies. They've been very entertaining. I think that as a series, they've been stronger than what Marvel's been doing lately. So if you've got
Dang.
the superhero itch, I think people should try My Hero Academia. They're very entertaining movies and well animated. So there's that. Number 20 is where I saw Sultana's Dream. That was also at Animationist Film. Sultana's Dream. This is a beautiful movie, but it basically has no plot. It's just about this
Uh,
this woman that she is they live in a matriarchy where the women are leading, and she like goes around the world to see where how different people live, and so there's really not a whole lot of plot. It's just about, oh, this pretty animation. um so that's Sultan's Dream. Number 19 is where I have Moana 2. So Moana 2 for me was disappointing. I did a whole video on how I was hopeful, even though it was a series turned into a movie. I was hopeful, especially with it being from this first movie from Vancouver Disney, that I was curious to see what they would come up with. But to me, it felt episodic. You could tell that it was a series turned into a
mhm.
movie. The story I thought was very weak. There were a lot of remember berries to the original film. Like, even you have a point where she says, "We'll see how far I'll go," and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, did you just name drop the original song?" I thought the music was very generic. Instead of "How Far I'll Go," you get "Beyond," which is basically the same
Mhm.
song. Instead of "You're Welcome," you get "Can I Have a Chiho," the same song basically. And then I found the whole story to be very strange. It was like they were acting like their island was Themyscira and like had no interaction with any other people or any other humans, and then she goes into the underworld, and I was like, what is happening? This is so bizarre. And like in the end, she becomes a demigod, right? She's
Well, I
got
don't know
the
if they,
she's
I don't
got
know
the
if they actually
tattoos
mentioned
and
that, but I don't know if they clarified that. Like, I will give it to you that that does seem a little bit weird with the
it was
ending that, like, they gave her like a special tattoo. I don't know if they say like, oh, that made her a demigod, but like it does seem a little bit strange.
it was bizarre. And I'm like, what are it's somehow Moana's powers to lift the island from under the sea? And like what? Like it was I just found it very strange. And it was one of those movies that like the more I thought about it, the more I was like, what? Um, and like all of the side characters were all waste wasted. You know, it felt like characters from a
Mhm.
sitcom that you would have like as an episodic
Yeah.
series. So even though it looks nice, it has some nice things about it. I was underwhelmed.
Yeah, there is one confession that I do want to make. I think Moana 2 is so far Disney's weakest animated film that they put out recently. Like, honestly, I feel
Really?
like this is even a downgrade compared to like Strange World and Wish. And a
Yeah.
big part of it is because of that unusual problem of trying to turn this into an animated feature, that it was planned as an animated series, that it was pretty much that for several years, and then suddenly, whoop, let's go and quickly change that into an animated feature. And you could tell because the plot is like so rushed that they had to
Yeah.
like condense everything into like a little over 90 minutes of a movie, and it just like it quickly goes by. Even the stuff that would have great potential like Matangi, like they just like come and go so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, like
And
even like even after that musical number that she did, it was like, okay, that's fun. And like I thought like maybe she would like trick Moana or something, but it's like, oh no way, no, she actually helped her out.
yeah, it was
Okay,
bizarre.
bye.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's worse than those two, but fair enough. I mean, it's definitely the worst
Mhm.
of the sequel of the recent sequels, in my opinion.
Yeah, but with that said, though, I wouldn't say that this movie was bad because there are still a few elements that are very strong. Like the animation is wonderful. I still think it is very top notch. Even the new elements that they introduce and even some of the music numbers, they are very impressive. That and also, I love the voice acting in this. Even in terms of the characters that I don't really like, I can hear that everybody in the cast, they gave it their 100% to be, for their characters to be as charismatic as possible. Like if there are any if there are any positive traits with the characters, I think a big part of it is more because of the actors, more so than it is with the script or anything like that. So
Yeah.
honestly, like, yeah, it is more on the weaker side of Disney's films, but I wouldn't say it's bad at all. This is still a major step up compared to what they used to do with the direct to home media sequel movies.
Yeah, damning by faint praise, but fair enough.
Hey, this is David from the Piecing It Together podcast, a podcast about movies and the movies that inspire them. For over 4 years, each week, a guest and I take a look at a new movie through the lens of what other movies we think were either an influence or connect in some other way. It's a fun, unique way to discuss films that leads to a great list of other movies to check out that either explore the same themes and ideas or maybe utilize similar filmmaking techniques. Including special episodes in our side series that twist the format, we've done over 200 episodes, so there's bound to be one on a film you've been thinking about and want to dig deeper into. So check us out on all the major podcasting apps and at piecingpod.com.
Number 18 is where I have Kung Fu Panda 4. And this was, I thought, pretty entertaining. It was solid, like nothing, it was kind of forgettable. But yeah, I thought it was fine.
Yeah, for me, honestly, this was a bit of a disappointment. I would say that, in my opinion, Moana 2 is just slightly better than Kung Fu Panda 4. Like on your list, I would just do like a small switch between the two. Now, Kung Fu Panda 4, I will say that it is it is entertaining in terms of the action. Like the animation,
Yeah.
again, is just fantastic, especially the climax of Po versus the chameleon. They did great on that. That and all And just trying to think back
I
about
think the biggest
anything
problem with
else.
this movie is pretending like the Fury is the lack of the Furious Five.
Yeah,
That's
no,
like the biggest
definitely.
problem. And then trying to like basically replace them with the Aquafina character and some of those things. It just that was the big problem with it. But I thought it was it was
Yeah,
fine.
and everything. Yeah, like the animation and action is great, but everything else feels like a massive letdown. Because
Yeah,
like
that
what
felt
makes the
cheap.
Yeah, like what makes the Kung Fu Panda films great, it's not just like about the Kung Fu and stuff like that, but they also have a very solid story and you see the growth of Poe. And in here, it feels like it tried to repeat that and they try to offer a bunch of fan service, like throwing in Tai Lung, whom, let's be honest, has no point in being here. Like it just felt like a letdown. I mean, it's not the worst sequel that DreamWorks put out. I mean, as evident by Megamind, but honestly, it's like it feels like a significant downgrade compared to what we have received with the previous Kung Fu Panda films.
But it still managed to be in the top 10 for the year. Thing made a surprising amount of money. Like, of course, I
Oh
didn't think it was
yeah,
a flop, but I was surprised that it was that high in the
oh
rankings. I'm
yeah,
like,
like
oh yeah,
oh no, I remember there was still a lot of hype
made a
regardless.
lot of
Like even
money.
like when I went to the theater to go and watch the movie, the cinema was literally full. Like it was jam packed, and I
Yeah.
like for the first time in years, I had a hard time trying to find a seat where I could go and sit down and actually watch the movie.
Yeah, yeah. It was a big hit. I feel like it was sort of underreported hit, not talked about that much. But number 17, I have Big City Greens, the movie Spacecation. I'd never seen an episode of Big City Greens. I'd never heard of it till this was. I always try to watch all the Disney films for the year, and we do a ranking, me and Stanford, and so that's why I watched this. But I actually found it quite entertaining. I liked the story. Like it's a pretty good father's child dynamic. It's very similar to Mitchell's vs. Machines. It's almost the same movie, but not as good. But still, like I thought it was pretty entertaining, and I was like, I would watch the show based on watching this movie. So
I honestly I haven't seen either Big City Greens or the movie itself, but I've heard a lot of great things about Big City Greens itself.
yeah,
Like it's all like much like a lot of Disney shows recently, like with the Owl House and stuff like that. Big City Greens does have a strong following, so I think it's one of those shows like give it a watch. I think you'll enjoy it.
yeah, I liked it. I really did. Number 16 is definitely where I have lower than most people. I have Memoir of a Snail at 16. I think that this animation, I did give it a fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. The animation is so good and beautiful in its own, way to look at. But I just found the story just so unrelentingly bleak that it just kind of lost me after a little bit. It's like, oh my gosh, what else could happen to this person? It was just a little deadening to me. And it didn't have the humanity of Mary and Max, I don't think, that the animator's previous film. I understand why it'll probably get nominated. It's the animation, and it just wasn't for me as far as just the story was just so dour, I thought.
I understand, honestly. I actually did see the movie, and the best way to go and describe it is if you take Junji Ito's Uzumaki, because of all the themes of like snails and stuff like that, like considering
Mm,
there's a lot of spirals, like it does feel very similar. But instead of seeing surrealistic horror, around every corner, it's just depression. Like
yeah.
everywhere you turn, suddenly you see something and it's like, oh, that's a shame. And I honestly, it's like I understand both sides of the argument. I understand why people love it and why it might not be for other people, especially when, like, in terms of the mood, they try to really hammer this hard, especially with bad luck that the main character gets again and again and again, where like each step of her life is just a series of disappointments. And even when you think things could get better, it's like, nope, it comes with a very dark catch that puts her in a deeper hole. And I will say, like, this is minor spoiler, but like the way that it tries to like get back up in itself, like suddenly like giving it a happy ending. Like there are some things that like, okay, I do get what it's trying to say and like really bring the message home. But honestly, it's kind of like a bit I don't know how to say this, but it's like it kind of rushes itself in order to make things up for like the series of depression that we've been seeing from this movie. So I feel like Memoir of a Snail is kind of an acquired taste, where I do understand why people would love this movie. It is very unique, and the animation is wonderful. But then at the same time, I do get it if it's too dark and, like you said, too bleak for some people.
Same. Yeah, yeah, I get it. I get why people love it. Well, number 15 for me is That Christmas. I'm a Christmas girl. I watch all the Christmas movies. And I thought this was charming. I liked the stories. And I mean, I think Richard Curtis, he knows how to do this like multiple story type film. And great voice cast, nice animation. I enjoyed it.
Honestly, I disagree a bit. I didn't enjoy it as much. In fact, the funny thing is that I feel like with That Christmas, it kind of shares the same problem as Moana 2, where I feel like because it handles so many different stories simultaneously, and a lot of people described it as a family-friendly version of Love Actually, which Richard Curtis also did work on,
Yeah.
that I feel like this would have worked much better as a series or kind of like this semi anthology show where like in each episode you take a look at the different characters and like their
Mhm.
dilemma that's going on that Christmas. And because of that, from there with the movie, like as it tries to go and continuously juggle all these different plot lines, it does feel a little bit disorienting, and it doesn't give you time to go and actually let the character developments that they're trying to present to really sink in, or like to even like much of an impact to the viewer. And there's even a lot of it that I kind of question, why does it have to be animated in the first place? I mean, yeah, sure, there is like Santa and Dasher, like you got those little bits there, but they're so far and few between that there's a part of me that kind of questions like, well, why wouldn't this be a live action movie? I mean, like the animation is
Yeah.
nice, but I feel like I'm questioning the use of the medium in the first place. Why does it have to be an animated movie when you could just easily go and produce this as a live action film?
Yeah, I that's fair. Those are all fair points. It's not like a masterpiece by any means, but I thought it was pleasant. I can see what you're saying. I mean, I do agree that I think as a series it probably would have been stronger. I do agree. All right, number 14 is where I have Orion in the Dark, and I think if there's an underrated movie from this year, I would say this is it. I think it's kind of insane that this movie made $0 at the box office because it was never released. And Inside Out 2 makes $1.6 billion, and they are very similar. I I do enjoy Inside Out 2 more, but not $1.6 billion more. I mean, they're both about kids and dealing with anxiety as a character and going on an existential journey through, they're not that different. And it's just insane to me that, I don't know, it's just crazy to me. I mean, I think they're both pretty similar.
Yeah, honestly, I cannot agree with you more. I'll even take it a step further. I think Orion in the Dark is the most underrated animated film of the year, and a
Yeah.
serious shame that DreamWorks would just disregard it, that they would just throw it onto Netflix instead of giving it a big screen release.
It's bizarre.
I had a lot of fun with this movie, and it certainly does feel like DreamWorks' answer to Inside Out. But instead of looking into emotions, it looks into aspects of darkness. And it got very creative with showing the different elements and trying to show the personifications of different things that happen during the dark, or how people are during the nighttime as well. And not to mention, The writing is so creative. I love how Charlie Kaufman went very meta with it, not only with the main storyline with Orion and trying to conquer fear of the dark and stuff like that, but also like in between, you get like these different cutscenes that it turns out, oh, it's a guy telling this little girl this story, and it gives this opportunity for Charlie Kaufman to go and make commentaries about animation, to talk about writing and stuff like that, and developing a story.
Yeah.
And I even love it that there's even one little moment where it actually did a little jab to Sundance. Like, honestly, I find it to be so clever and very underappreciated, down to the point that it's honestly frustrating to see this year's award season where Netflix and DreamWorks are just treating it as a television special. Like, they're just putting it in the TV categories, where I personally feel like it would have legitimately been a good contender in the actual best animated feature category. Like, honestly, I think it would be up there against all the other films that I won't say right now because they're going
Especially
to be
when it
coming
was
soon.
released, there was no animated films in the cinemas. It
Mhm.
I just believe that it would have done something. Like, it's just so bizarre. But yeah, I agree. We're on the same page with that one. Number 13, I have another Netflix animated film. I have Ultraman Rising. I thought this was pretty entertaining. The animation was really great. The action was really well animated, and I overall, for a kaiju movie, I thought it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I feel like Ultraman Rising is what that film is what the Tiger Apprentice wants to be.
Yeah,
And there's a
I
lot
agree.
that it actually there's a lot that it managed to do very well. Like, the animation is spectacular. Like, not only having this Spider-Verse style, but also making it a throwback to the classic Ultraman shows. And you can even see
Yeah,
with the designs where the kaijus actually look like monsters that are actually big rubber suits. So, like, visually they did amazingly well to capture the spirit of Ultraman while giving it a modern twist. But at the same time, I'm not really a major fan of it because I just feel like it's kind of disappointing how the script felt very mediocre, where it spends more time trying to be the feature-length version of Feed the Kitty, where it's mostly about Ultraman being a father to this to this little kaiju kid, and that's
yeah.
it. That for me, I feel like it was a letdown. If they had a stronger story, this been like legitimately on par with the Spider-Verse films, and we could have had like a legitimate Spider-Verse contender. But as is right now, I'm visually spectacular, but
Yeah. Well, and I
and
guess
the story
since
wise, it's
I guess since Godzilla minus one was so excellent and had so much to say, that it has sort of set the bar for that genre. But I
oh
do
yeah.
think this was a lot better than Godzilla X Kong. That was such a boring movie. I did not like that story at all. So it was the winner for me as far as kaiju movies this year.
Yep, that is
Um,
fair.
Number 12, and this is not really an animated film, but whatever. I wanted to include it. I have Sonic the Hedgehog 3 at number 12. And I find this Sonic characters to be so unbelievably charming. I love them, all of them, especially Sonic. I think that they are so cute and so well. I mean, thank goodness they redid it, because that wow. I just find them so appealing. I think I could watch Sonic do just about anything, and I would be like, "Oh, that's so cute. They're so." And I thought Jim Carrey was a lot of fun playing both of the leads. It
Mhm.
did veer a little bit too much into generic superhero movie to me, and so it is my least favorite of the three. And people got really upset when I said that,
Ooh.
but I still liked it. I still overall enjoyed it. I just think it was trying to be an Avengers movie too often, and I just like it better when they're just sweet and simple, and so it's my least favorite of the three, but I did enjoy it.
Will say that I do agree with you with the story. It is the weaker element of the picture. There are a lot of times that I feel like it's prioritizing more to be like a popcorn flick and delivering on fan service than to actually craft a strong story. Because there's a lot of it that I feel like some of it is rehashing the second movie, especially with Sonic trying to learn like what it means to be an actual hero and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But with that said, though, it still has a lot of the elements that makes the Sonic the Hedgehog movies work. And I'll even say that the new additions actually make it better. Like they actually work out so great. Like I was worried about
they were so cute.
I was worried about the inclusion of Shadow if his backstory with Maria would feel very out of place compared to like the goofiness that these movies would bring out. But honestly, I think it actually works in this and actually makes the story a bit better. Like it's not rushing to go into the next action scene or whatever. It actually takes its time for us to get to know Shadow and know his backstory, and very well done and surprisingly well executed, where it makes the Sonic movies, it makes the Sonic movies a little bit more serious, but in a good way. Also, Jim Carrey always steals the show, but now with the addition of Gerald Robotnik, now we got 2 Jim Carreys. Not only does it give him great material, but it gives him great material in terms of being a character. Like we see a little bit more depth to the character of Dr. Eggman. So overall, though, and this might be a little bit of a hot take as well, but I actually do like it more than you. I wouldn't say it's like the worst of the 3, but I would say that it's on par with the second movie. Look, I'm still contemplating which one I like more, the second or the third, but still great nonetheless.
So the first is your favorite?
No. It is the first one, I just thought it was just okay. I didn't really like it that much.
The second one's my favorite too. Okay.
But by the way, I do have one question. Considering that we are counting Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in animated films, can I also include another movie that's not animated but should be on this list?
Yes.
Gladiator 2.
Yeah,
because let's be honest, that movie is way more cartoony than most of the movies on this list. Even though,
fair.
like, even with Denzel Washington, like, yeah, he was definitely the best part of the film. But even with his over-the-top nature, like he's definitely a lot more animated.
You didn't buy those sharks? Those animated sharks?
Oh no, I'm more into the big gladiator guy riding a rhino like he's freaking Donkey Kong.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, number 11 is where I have Transformers 1. I mean, I thought this was really good. Is your sort of classic friendship origin story division that we had. But it was, I thought, well executed, well done, good voice performances, good animation. I was invested. I liked it.
In a way, this is what Mufasa wants to be.
Yes, you're right. That's true.
This is like shockingly solid. Like you wouldn't expect a Transformers movie to be this good. And I understand why many people would go out to say that this is possibly the best Transformer movie yet. And I mean, the animation, of course, is very solid, but also the story, especially to see the origins, both Orion Pax and D16, and how they became Optimus Prime and Megatron, and the time like where they would go, like it could get quite serious and even quite brutal as well. So it is extremely engaging. And I'll even add that in my experience watching this in the theater, oh my God, were people so engaged with it. Like by the time like we get into the second half, that's when the crowd really went rowdy. And like whenever we see Orion Pax actually become Optimus Prime, that's when the audience would go wild and be like, yeah. So yeah, definitely a great time, and surprise, honestly, one of the biggest surprises of the year.
Yeah, agreed. Number 10 is an obscure one, but I really enjoyed it. It's called The Night Before Christmas in Wonderland. And this is an animated film that came out of the UK that is about Santa. He gets this long delayed letter from the Queen of Hearts that she wrote when she was a little girl, asking him to come help her. And so he goes to Wonderland, and she's now become the Queen of Hearts and the villain, and everything. And It was very creative. I thought that meshing of Santa mythology and Wonderland really worked well. And the animation, if you had told me that it was Cartoon Saloon, I would have believed you. It's definitely aping Cartoon Saloon style. It's very much in the style of their 2D animation. But I thought pleasantly so. And so it looks great, has a cool aesthetic. It's a creative, it's hard to come up with new Christmas stories to tell. I mean, we just had so many. So I thought it was pretty creative, this idea of Santa getting a letter from the Queen of Hearts, and so this merging of these two lores, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it myself, but I did see the trailer of it, and I'll give it that it does look extremely creative, and
Yeah.
it feels like, I don't know if it's actually based on a book or something, but it definitely captures the look and the feel of a children's book, like that they're
Yeah.
adapting this little story, this little story, and just bringing it to life. And even the illustrations, they look like something straight out of a children's book. To
It just
go and
reminded me of
capture
Secret
this
of the
fun.
Kells. I thought it had that sort of feel to it, the animation.
Oh.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they were inspired, by who isn't inspired by Tom Moore. I mean, we all are. But
Yeah.
it just had that sort of, I thought, aesthetic. But so people should give it a shot. It was one of my favorite non-Hallmark Christmas for this year.
Yeah,
So,
I'll definitely consider checking it out. Like, if it is as good as you say, I'll be interested.
Yeah. Well, so number 9 is where I have Flow. Now we're getting to the ones that I really, really liked. So 9, I have Flow. I thought I actually interviewed Gintz on this channel, on this podcast. So you should definitely all check that out. But I thought what was really cool is that it has the hyper realistic aesthetic, but it never loses his own artistry as well. Like, it doesn't look like, you still see his style, his art. You can feel his brushwork and his aesthetic and his artistry. And so it didn't go too far into the hyper realism. And it's very simple. There's a side of me that thinks this would have been better as a short, that is stretching out to a feature was maybe, was just like a little much, but I really did enjoy it. It's a very sweet movie, and I'm thrilled that it's getting so much buzz. I mean, it really seems like it could win this year.
Yeah,
Best animated feature.
Especially the big upset at the Golden Globes,
Yeah.
like suddenly being the winner. Like, I haven't seen it yet, but
You haven't?
I want to. No, I haven't. I didn't get the chance to. But I
Darn.
know, like, at some point I have to. Like, especially like, at the very least, I gotta before the Oscars, because right now, like, with its Golden Globe win, it looks like it could be a major contender, and it could suddenly end up becoming the big best animated feature winner.
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems pretty clear that it's going to be Wild Robot, Inside Out 2, Flow, Wallace and Gromit, and Memoir of Snail. I think those are going to be the nominees. I'd be surprised.
Yeah,
if
that's
anything.
That's what I'm predicting as well. Although I will say Memoir of the Snail could be the interchangeable one, where maybe they'll throw in like either Moana 2, or maybe another animated movie, or maybe Ultraman Rising or something like that.
Yeah, I could see actually Wallace and Gromit getting off in favor of Chicken for Linda. I could see that, because a lot of times they do champion these independent, it's a G Kids, which tend to do pretty well.
Yeah.
For that. So I could see that, but I think you'd be a pretty strong bet for those 5 nominees.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
Number 8 is where I have Inside Out 2. I was very nervous about this going into it. The idea of making anxiety a character, like that's very different than like your base emotions. And I felt like I still think that it's somewhat redundant to when you have fear and disgust, you have anxiety and what's the other the big pink one? Worry?
Embarrassment.
I feel like there's somewhat redundant now at this point, some of these emotions, but they pulled it off. The story, and I think really focusing it on her fear of losing her friends really was effective, because that is such those like 8th grade, those tween years, it's so hard. I remember going through multiple sets of friends. Like either they'd stop being my friend, I'd stop being their friend. Like it's just a tumultuous time. And I felt like they captured that very, very well. And there's nitpicks that I could make with it and that I have made with it, but overall they pulled it off. It was good.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people say that they would consider Inside Out 2 to be the best non-Toy Story Pixar sequel. And look back, honestly, I think I do have to agree. It is a solid animated feature and their best one that they've had in quite a while, honestly.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like, even though I will admit that maybe it's not as good as the first Inside Out, it definitely does capture the spirit of the original film and made it a worthy successor, where they look into like human psychology in a fun-filled animated way. And there's a lot of times that honestly I feel like can be extremely relatable and do give out a very good idea of how things work in your head, like, you know, showing this as this fun little cartoon with these colorful characters. And even with the moments with anxiety and stuff like that, like, and this is the thing that I absolutely adore with both Inside Out and Inside Out 2, is how like you see these moments actually happening, but it also reflects upon your life as well, when you see like there are times when you would have like these anxiety moments, or like these times of stress that can really get the best of you. And honestly, the way that like, I know there's been a lot of like drama that happened behind the scenes on this, but then again, the same thing can be said with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Still though, what they did is honestly fantastic, not just with the emotion characters, but also with Riley's side story as well. They handled it extremely well, and it feels like it feels like a welcoming return of what we love from Pixar. So honestly,
and it's a real gift for parents, because now they have these tools with both Orion in the Dark and Inside Out movies to talk to kids about these issues and in a constructive way and in a creative way. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, I'll even admit, even my therapist actually used Inside Out 2 to help explain some things for me. So it really does work out. Like, it is a great gift for everyone, especially for therapists. So honestly, with Inside Out 2, I really enjoyed it. Definitely one of my favorite animated films of the year.
Yeah. Well, I have 2 shorts actually next up for my 7 and 6. Number 7, I have An Almost Christmas Story. This was a short directed by David Lowery. It's produced by Alfonso Cuarón, so it's got an all-star team. It's a very sweet story about this little owl that gets sent to New York in the Rockefeller tree. He accidentally, and he ends up making friends with this little girl named Lily. And it's just a sweet holiday short. I mean, there's such a grand tradition of holiday shorts going all back to, of course, the Rankin Bass and Grinch Stole Christmas. And, you know, there's just been so many wonderful animated shorts over the years. And so this was a nice entry in that tradition.
Yeah, I actually did see this one recently.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
And I gotta, this is actually quite a pleasant surprise. And first and foremost, I just want to say, finally, yay! David Lowery did something good with Disney. It's a godforsaken time.
But you didn't like Pete's Dragon?
Nah, it's honestly, I feel like it is the safest movie that I've ever seen. It's like safe to the point of being extremely. Yeah, like
How
the
is it safe?
2016
It
remake.
completely upended. It didn't do anything similar to the original film.
But like it did like but what did it do instead? It's like there's not much that I could really remember other than the fact that it presented like it started out with a very whimsical car crash. And that's really the most that I could remember from it.
Wow, I love Pete's Dragon. I think it's yeah, so we disagree there, but that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he has managed to bring his own aesthetic and voice. Even Peter Pan and Wendy, which was disappointing. Still, he manages to bring his own voice to Disney, which is impressive. Not all filmmakers can manage to do that, and here he definitely does. You can tell it's a David Lowery film.
And honestly, I do love the aesthetic with what they did with the stop
Yeah.
motion. That it feels like everything is just like really try to emphasize the handcrafted nature of it, where everything feels like the materials to create the stop motion puppets and the sets. It's almost like it's all recycled. Like so much of it feels like it's made out of cardboard.
Yeah.
Like the pigeons and the owls are like made out of different materials. And I gotta say, like even with names, like not just with David Lowery, like you do get sudden surprises. It's like, I recognize you, like suddenly you got like Alfonso Orion who is actually producing this, and then also you got the folk singer who's pops in from time to time to sing songs in the film, like it was John C. Reilly. And like even the owl, I was surprised that it was Jim Gaffigan in possibly his most subdued role that I've heard him in. Like it's very rare that you would see Jim Gaffigan be this subtle, be this calm, be this serious, and honestly did give out a very good performance. So honestly, I will say at the very least, this is a great animated short, and honestly, this is a way better Christmas in New York than the movie that I had to review just before Christmas. Oh goodness. I don't know if you saw that, but I reviewed the Mondo TV movie of Christmas in New York, and oh my God,
Wow.
it brought me down a insane rabbit hole that I don't know if I want to visit again. It's just crazy.
I haven't even heard of that. Wow. Yeah. Well, number 6, I have Welcome Home, Franklin, and this is in the new series, Peanut series, for Apple, and I loved it. I thought it was so good. I mean, I'm a softie when it comes to the Peanuts. I almost always love them, and this was no exception. Getting to know Franklin better and him introducing his new friends to like jazz music and John Coltrane, and him and I think it's Linus entering the stock car race and building their own car, and it was just lovely. I loved it, and so people should check it out. It's really good.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about the new Peanut stuff that they've been bringing out. Like they've been getting a lot better and better, and some people would even say that they're on par with the classics back in the 60s and the 70s. So honestly, like this is one that I know I should go and check out. At least like do a little bit of a marathon, or at the very least, I'll go and check out some of Terrific Tariq's videos about Peanuts, like to learn a little bit more about like, what are some of the new stuff to go and check out. So I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, number 5 is where I have Mars Express. This is another movie out of France, but this was a beautiful piece of sci-fi storytelling. It's a crime noir sci-fi. It is an R-rated film. You can definitely feel lots of inspiration from Ghost in the Shell and from Blade Runner, but it still, I think, does enough of its own thing to create a compelling story. There's these androids and there's looking into this case, and I really thought it was excellent for what it was trying to do.
Just out of curiosity, did we talk about this last year? Because I feel like it's quite familiar.
Yeah, we might have, but it finally got the release last year, and then it was not submitted. I saw it last year for the first time, and then but then I don't think it was actually submitted to the Academy I think it was submitted this year, so that's why I included it on this list. Yeah, but we might have talked about it last year. Can't remember.
Okay. But I will say I Yeah, I will say though, I did actually see it myself,
Oh,
and
good.
it is, yeah, it is quite an intriguing animated film. And I did get some very strong vibes that it feels very similar to Ghost in the Shell, especially
Yeah.
with the cyberpunk futuristic theme, especially with a case that they have to go and solve that does relate to androids and robots and stuff like that. And especially with the strong world building that they do have,
Yeah.
and everything leading up to have a very strong commentary about human nature and
Yeah.
androids at the same time. So,
But I didn't
like,
think it was too derivative. Did you feel like it was?
um, it is definitely an artistic style of movie. Like, it does lean in a lot more to be very artsy. And like that, like I will admit, I might have to have like a second watch in order to understand a little bit more about it.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, though, I will say like it is a very well made picture.
Yeah. Well, number 4 is where I have Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. And I was very pleased with this. I was nervous because I thought the Chicken Run sequel was underwhelming. And like, oh no, is this going to be kind of like that? But I enjoyed it practically as much as Were Rabbit. I thought it was really good. I liked the story, I liked the characters. It was funny. The animation, of course, is great. I was very happy about it.
Yeah, I was on the same page as you. There was a part of me that was a little bit concerned because of how weak the second Chicken Run movie was. But after watching it, of all the animated films that I've seen in 2024, or technically like with Vengeance Most Foul, I kind of count that as a 2025 movie because of its Netflix release. But on this list, this is my number one. I
Ah,
love this
yeah,
movie, and I think it's the best thing that Aardman has created since Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Like
yeah,
they
I
actually
agree.
created a worthy and great successor to the Wrong Trousers, like capturing the spirit of what we love from Wallace and Gromit with both the comedy and the suspense, but at the same time, really showing the modern craftsmanship of Aardman's animation, like really leveling themselves
Yeah,
up. Like honestly, it even features some of my favorite inventions from Wallace. Yeah, like that opening bit, like when we see Wallace waking up and like going down to get dressed up and getting breakfast stuff, like those are some of my favorite inventions from Wallace so far. And especially like not just with like keeping, but also like I love how there is at the same time this subtle commentary about our dependency on technology, especially with introducing smart home, where like they're not as in your face about it as like what American productions would do, but at the same time they incorporate that in the story in a very amusing way. So honestly, with Vengeance Most Foul, just absolutely fantastic. And like since I count that as a 2025 movie, it's going to be very hard for any other animated feature to be on par with what we have gotten
yeah,
with this.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I really did enjoy it. Number 3, I have The Day the Earth Blew Up, the Looney Tunes movie, and I don't understand why they tried to submit it for this year. They should have just waited, and then there could be some buildup and have the release and everything. But anyway, I just want to tell everybody, go see it when it gets released. It's really fun. The animation is great. I mean, the only real downside to it is that it really focuses on Daffy and Porky. So people that are hoping to see Bugs, you don't see Bugs. People hoping to see some of the other characters, that might be a little disappointing for some. But I think it's the best Looney Tunes feature film that we've ever had. I think it's certainly better than both of the Space Jam movies back in action. So I was very happy because I really wanted it to be good, and it
Yeah,
was. So I can't wait to hear what you think when you see it.
yeah, I mean, I am hoping that I will soon. I'm thank you so much for helping me out with trying to get a screener, but I haven't gotten one yet, but I did contact Warner Brothers in order to do so, so I'm hoping
Yeah,
maybe. But yeah, I'm definitely hyped up for it, and for me, this is one of my most anticipated animated films of 2025, especially after hearing so many amazing things about it. Like I'm very curious, and especially as
yeah,
someone who did grow up with the Looney Tunes, to see them come back in their true original form, like just being like just being crazy cartoons. Like I am excited for it.
Yeah. Number 2 is where I have Chicken for Linda. I really loved this little movie. It's very simple. Just this mom, she scolds her child. She feels bad about scolding her child. And she says, I will make for you your favorite meal, which is chicken and with peppers. She's a terrible cook. She's not good at cooking. But they spend the whole rest of the day going around the city trying to find all the ingredients for chicken and peppers. And so it's not like a heavy on plot movie, but I absolutely loved the animation for Sebastian Laudenbach. He's incredible, and I love the fact that that he's basically making these movies with out of his apartment, like unbelievable. Him and Chiara Malta was a co-director on this one, and they're doing like everything as far as the music and the editing and it's just a one 2-man show going on there. And so I just loved the simplicity of the story, the sweetness of the story. I loved the animation. It's great.
Honestly, I actually did see this one as well. And I gotta say, I do get it why there would be love for this movie, because I feel like it's a bit of a throwback to classic cinema, because you
Yeah.
have this simple premise, but then it keeps built up like one after another. Like with each scene, it becomes crazier and crazier, and the scenario just becomes bigger and bigger, where now like the entire apartment complex where Linda and her mom lives, like it just like they all get involved, and it just becomes like this one
Yeah.
crazy situation, all for the sake of trying to make chicken and peppers.
Because
And
there's
not
a
to
heart
mention,
and
like,
soul behind it too, because the reason that's her favorite is because it was her father's favorite. So, and he's
Mhm.
passed away. So there's some weight to it to it in their relationship.
Yeah, and with the simplicity, it does leave a lot of room to get to know the people that are around the apartment complex, to get to know Linda, to get to know her mom, and to get to know the other people who get themselves involved in the entire situation. And I will say the
Mm-hmm.
animation is also very nice as well. Like again, it's another thing that is simple but very effective at the same time, using just a few, just like a very limited color palette, but trying to make the most out of it. The only criticism that I do have, though, is that the musical numbers do feel like they just come in out of nowhere, and like that, like they don't seem to have like much purpose for the story itself. It's like, it's like at some point it's like, we end this movie to bring you this musical number, and then it goes like super surrealistic, and it's like, all right, now back to our story, back to
I can
where we
see
were
that.
from before. So that thing kind of threw me off, because like there's even at one point like the big musical number where suddenly her father comes back, and I'm just there like, what the fridge is going on? And suddenly like we get back to like what's been happening outside, and I'm just there like, oh, are we not going to bring this up? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, my number 1 is where I have The Wild Robot. It was my favorite movie of the year, period, let alone animation. I absolutely loved it. And I love the story about how nurturing another human or another being changes you fundamentally. You can't not be changed by it. It was this is a tribute to parenting, really, this movie, and how even though it's a robot, they cannot help but be changed from nurturing and caring for this little geese. And I just absolutely loved that story. I loved the fact that they didn't feel a need to kidify it at hardly at all. Like yeah, you have the wisecracking fox, but like not in the sense of like modern jokes or like joking about Twitter or something like that, like you might see from Disney, or DreamWorks in the past. And it was a just a beautiful, touching, beautifully animated, wonderful film.
I gotta say, I am not surprised whatsoever that you love this movie. And I will tell you why. Because there's one film that The Wild Robot reminds me so much of: Robot Dreams. The way
Yes,
you take these two films, and I feel like they're extremely similar, because
they are.
it has a very simple premise where it's a robot who is stranded on an island filled with nothing but animals, but it makes up for it by including a lot of heart to really get to know these animals and to get to know Roz herself. Now, I will admit, prior to watching this, I was a bit hesitant and doubtful when I saw everybody going around saying like, "Oh my God, this is the best DreamWorks movie ever," and I was just there, I was like, "Is it though?" And then when I went to go see it, I was like, "Okay, I get it," because it definitely is a wonderful feature. I mean, you already got the animation that's very painterly like, and it's a little similar to what they have done before with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. But especially the heart that really makes it to see Roz become, learning how to be a parent to this little geese, and especially the dynamic between Bright Bill and Roz. Like for me, my favorite character is actually Bright Bill and how he grows up to become this like oddball geese that was raised by an actual robot, and not only showing like the cute little funny side of it, also the dramatic side of the whole factor as well. And they pulled it off so beautifully in this. Now, one thing I will say, however, and I want to ask you this as well, honestly, I am hesitant to say if this is the best DreamWorks movie, because DreamWorks can make some legitimate masterpieces like The Prince of Egypt, The Dorado, Shrek 2, Kung Fu Panda 2, How to Train Your Dragon 2. And to
Yeah.
say and honestly, I don't know if I could say if The Wild Robot would be on par with those. Like, it does have a few flaws of its own. But I will say, though, that it definitely is, well, this and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, it is easily the best films from DreamWorks in recent years. But
Yeah.
to go back to you,
It would be in my top 5, I think.
oh,
I mean,
okay.
I don't know if anything will ever beat The Prince of Egypt for me. I love that movie so much. But in the Last Wish, that to me was a masterpiece. So I mean, but I really think it would be in my top 5
Oh,
for
yeah.
DreamWorks. I do.
Okay, that's
It'd
fair.
be up there.
That I
You know.
understand.
Yeah. Well, and it's also hard because like, do you count the Aardman movies? Do you count Chicken
That
Run?
that is that is tricky. Like if we also throw in Chicken Run and Curse of the Were-Rabbit, it's like, ooh, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I love the Wild Robot, but I don't know if it would be on par with those. I mean,
Yeah, it's
like
tough. But
those are masterpieces.
yeah, but I really did love it. And so there we go. That's my number 1. What? So you would have Wallace and
Yay!
Gromit be your number 1, you said.
Oh yeah, like on
Yeah.
this list, I would easily have Wallace and Gromit as number 1. But if
Well,
not that, I will say though, if not that, then it would be the Wild Robot.
yeah. Well, let us know if you're listening how you would rank, what your thoughts were about these various movies. And if we have encouraged you to maybe watch something that you haven't seen, let us know what you think when you guys see it. We'd love to do that. And put in the comments, just because this was such a long episode, put in the comments so we'll know you listened to the whole thing. If you say, how about Animat loves Wallace? Let's put that. So you put that in your comment, then we'll know you listened to the whole episode.
I don't know if that would actually help, because like I already put out my review, so people already know that I love Wallace and Gromit.
But
like,
we'll know you
like,
listened to the whole episode.
No. A better example, if you have listened to the whole thing, write down about what do you think about my thoughts on Chip for Linda. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, yes, I've seen that. Well, either way, let us know if you listen to this whole thing. And we had so much fun talking about it. It's always a blast. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And make sure you check out earlier in the year, we did our ranking of our favorite animated films. We did like 4 or 5 episodes of different, we did stop motion, we did CG, we did traditional. It was really fun.
Yes.
That was a very fun. That was a blast. So make sure to check that out. And if people want to follow your content, how do they do it?
Well, if you want to go and follow me, first and foremost, there is my YouTube channel, Electric Dragon 505, so that you could subscribe to me there, and you could go and check out a lot more fun and related videos, including reviews, animation look back, and so much more. I'm also on social media. I am on Blue Sky. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. Generally, it's Animat 505, so you can find me there. Also, I have a Twitch where I would live stream my podcast, Animat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, as well as other stuff where I would do Let's Plays. I am planning on doing one soon. First, I just need to get myself better. But at the same time, I also have a Patreon. So if you want to go and support my work and get some amazing rewards, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat.
And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure that you're following me over at Hallmarkies Podcast. We have an interview with Simon Otto, the director of That Christmas, over there. I didn't do it, but we have it over there. I've interviewed Gintz, other really fun content as far as coverage of many of the movies we talked about on my channel. So check that out. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. And if you're watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that so much. We also have the Patreon group, which is the biggest way you can support everything I do. And we have a lot of fun talking about animation and many other things. And we have the merch store. You can hashtag animation junkie shirts and lots of other fun stuff. Take a look at that. And thanks so much again. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
See you later, dudes.
Yeah.